Hello, welcome to the Sideboard here at the StarCityGames.com Standard Open in Baltimore, part of the SCGTour. I am Nick Miller alongside Todd Anderson. How you doing?
What's up, man? How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great.
Yeah, new standard, baby. New
standard. Todd's been writing a lot about a deck he likes. Yeah. You know, you've been playing Jeskai Black for the entire, past that I can remember.
Oh, it's been a while. It's been about 6 months.
But now, the goggles.
Yeah.
The goggles.
All right, so
they do everything.
They do. It's really weird. So, you had a couple of cards that you could use with Pyromancer's goggles before the Shadows over Innistrad came out, and you could play Magmatic Insight, you could play Tormenting Voice, you could play Fiery Impulse, but there was never like a good kick in the teeth, early thing to do. And now that we have Lightning Axe, there's like some crazy turns where you can just like play Pyromancer's Goggles, kill 2 gigantic creatures, and you just have to discard 1 card. And as long as you have the juice flowing, you usually have some extra stuff to discard, or some tricky stuff to discard like Fiery Temper, or even Drownyard Temple.
All right, we've seen this deck on camera once, and I've seen you play off camera a couple of times. The velocity this deck has when you're just tearing through your deck, drawing like 5 or 6 cards a turn, just lets you just rip through and do everything you want. You have Jace enabling you to just do more things. And of course, we can't forget about Thing in the Ice. You're bringing the new cards to the table. You were on this card day 1 and have not put it down.
Yeah, so, we had a couple of Thing in the Ice brews after we played one versus video. Like, I just had a Thing in the Ice in Blue-Red Prowess deck, playing against Ramp, and I just smushed Brad. Like, 4-1 him in the versus video, and it was all Thing in the Ice. Well, 3 of the 4 wins were Thing in the Ice. And after that, I was like, man, maybe this card's just insane. And so, the next day, we go over to Jerry Thompson's house, and we're, like, trying to put new decks together and stuff. And I had talked to him a little bit the day before after the video and told him that I thought Thing in the Ice was good, and I just want to try to build weird decks with Thing in the Ice. And so he hands me a deck. This got Lightning Axe, Drownyard Temple, Jace, Thing in the Ice, and just like a bunch of removal, basically, and that's it. And it was really funny because he even had Avacyn's Judgment in the deck, but he was using a proxy for it because it wasn't out yet, and he was just using Fall of the Titans as the proxy. And after about like 2 games, 3 games maybe, it's like, can we just switch this? Yeah. This card would just be great every time, just kill 2 creatures. Funny enough, original version of the deck didn't even have Pyromancer's Goggles. It was just a synergy-based deck. It was basically just this deck without goggles. And it was a little underwhelming, and after playing with the deck for a little while, I was just like, why don't we just like try a goggles in it? And then the first time I drew it, I was like, okay, next game, put in another goggles. Put in another goggles in the deck. And after about a week or 2 of testing, okay, put a 3rd goggles in the deck. The deck just goes off, though. If you get to untap with the Pyromancer's Goggles, you're usually going to, draw some cards or kill a bunch of creatures. And either of those things is good because it can either find you ways to kill creatures or buy you enough time to, find what you need to actually close out the game.
All right, the goggles is so just unsuspicious looking, but allows you to do so many things because what I didn't realize is when you do Tormenting Voice or Magmatic Insight, you only have to discard 1 card, but you get the effect twice. Right. Same with, Lightning Axe. Yeah,
so all these cards are discard upon casting, and when you're making a copy of a card, you don't actually have to pay that cost, same as you don't have to pay the mana cost, because you're just putting a virtual copy onto the stack. And so, yeah, you just discard a land, you draw 4 off of Magmatic Insight, and it gets even crazier when, you start copying your big stuff like Fall of the Titans.
Right, I just witnessed a game where you attacked, you flipped 2 Things in the Ice and fireballed them for like 40 or something just absurd.
Well, not quite 40.
It seemed like
it was 22 and then attacking for 14.
Yeah.
That was it. And I only had 1 card left in my deck because I had zeroed Chandra 3 times and almost decked myself. So.
Right. The way you can just tear through with Chandra and all of the cantrips is just insane, the velocity this deck has. You also have Jorian here.
Yeah, so later addition to the deck, and original versions had like Just the Wind plus Oath of Jace combo, a little more madness oriented. Now the only really madness card in the deck is Fiery Temper, and we have some Drownyard Temples to discard to the stuff. Most of the time we're just like trying to nickel and dime them to death. We're not really trying to be too tricky, but what Jorian does, it allows you to gain raw card advantage so that you can play Jorian and like a draw card spell or a removal spell, and you start getting getting these raw cards in your hand that allow you to have a little bit more fuel for Magmatic Insight and Tormenting Voice.
Yeah, that's crazy because you don't actually lose any equity. It feels like you're just netting so many cards that even with these cards that make you discard, you're drawing so many. It's just absurd. I love it. Fall of the Titans here, just an all-star. Splitting it up.
In case you don't know, with Fall of Titans, so basically what happens is you start off initially by choosing up to 2 targets. So if your opponent doesn't have any creatures in play, you just target them. Then it's just Fireball after it has Surge. If they have creatures in play, you get to kill up to 4 of them, and for each one minus the 4th one, you get to dome them. So if you do Fall of Titans for, let's say, 6, you can go 6 to 3 creatures and to the dome. You can go 12 to the dome and kill 2 creatures, or that's about it.
That blows my mind.
It is cool.
That is pretty crazy.
It is cool.
The flexibility that card allows you in this deck. So you kill everything, you draw a bunch of cards, and then you burn them out, or you use Chandra to kill them, or Things in the Ice to kill
+1 on Chandra's great. Thing in the Ice flips is pretty sweet. Wandering Fumarole actually just does a good job sometimes. I've killed a couple people just by like Madison Fiery Temper and then paying for it with goggles.
Moving to the sideboard, you got Eldrazi Obligator. Then this card we got to talk about, Fevered Visions.
All right, Fevered Visions, they have a little switcheroo sideboard plan for a lot of these super removal heavy decks. You know, they don't want to lose a Thing in the Ice or Jace. And so, you know, sometimes they have like Ultimate Price along with their Declaration of Stone and the Silk Wrap, Stasis Snare, just all the cheap removal spells that would normally pain a deck like this. We just invalidate it completely by cutting all of our creatures. And we just bring in 4 Fevered Visions, a bunch of counter spells, a little more removal, and we just try to counter and kill everything, and then they just drown. When you just play, Fevered Vision, and just every turn they just end the turn with 5 or 6 cards in hand that they just can't cast because their entire deck is just full of clunkers and removal. And like half the time they have to like kill their own creatures so that they don't die to Fevered Visions. And it gets really crazy once you start drawing into like the 2nd or the 3rd Fevered Visions. Then like they're just helpless.
Right.
And sometimes it can backfire. You know, if they are able to leverage that card advantage. Like some of the black-white decks can be a little more aggressive, and they also can just like 0 hanger bag, just like, you know, basically discard it.
Getting free cards
to get it out of their hand. So there are ways that they can, you know, make it a little less good, but I'm still drawing cards too. And that's the big thing. In a deck that's trying to attrition you out with like discard spells, things like that, when my opponent is drawing up to 8 off of Fevered Visions and discarding Read the Bones against a control deck, you know you've won the game. It's just over.
Yeah, they're barking up the wrong tree trying to out-attrition you when you're drawing that many cards a game.
Yeah.
Deck looks great. You're doing exactly what you've been writing about. Deck looks sweet. You're 7-1 so far, so you got one more round to go to close out. Last question we got to ask you. You've been testing with the Roanoke group. Most of them are on the white-black Eldrazi deck.
Yeah.
But you've been on this goggles thing the entire time.
I can't help it.
Was there any kind of flack? Were they saying you should be playing this deck?
No.
They fully
they were
saying
all
just
really
keep playing
supportive.
this deck?
Like normal, like you know how friends get where like sometimes they just kind of, you know, give you the business, right? They're just like, yeah, your deck's great, Todd. You know, maybe you should just play that deck instead of playing the team deck. You know, it was none of that, because by the time we were done testing, we had put in 2 weeks of work, and we all thought that both decks looked like very good. And I got like this deck to the point where I just fell in love with it, and I just tuned it, you know, basically by myself with a little help from the rest of them. That's the Eldrazi Obligators. That's like a few of the one-ofs in the deck. You know, mostly just like tuning it by myself, playing it, you know, against random people and stuff. And it's so good. It's so good. Few rounds into the tournament, Ross Merriam, 1-3, dead. Just watching me play matches, just like, oh man, I should have played that deck. He just like watched me draw 4 off of Magmatic Insight. I should have played that deck.
You heard it here. You should be playing this deck. Todd, thanks for joining me on the sideboard.
Yep.
Stay tuned to StarCityGames.com all weekend long for the action here in Baltimore.